I have the privilege of interviewing Reverend Ron Rood, longtime ordained minister with the Science of Mind. He is very prominent in the establishment of the ministries, the many ministries in Russia, Ukraine, all of that area. We're going to find out more about that. So Ron, if you would begin by just telling us where you were raised, and if you have siblings, and then how you got into the Science of Mind movement, and then how you got to Russia. Okay, thank you.
How long does that take?
It's about 30 minutes.
Well, I was raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, a little town called Lauderdale. And I joined the Navy when I was 17. I went to California, Long Beach. And from there, I lived most of my life. And it wasn't until a lot of things have happened. In fact, I'm writing my memoirs now, my book, and my life about everything, including Science of Mind. And it was in Ventura, California. I was teaching aerobics at the YMCA. And this tall, funny-looking guy come in with his curly hair, always joking. And I found out that his name was Chuck. And well, before this, in my past, I was brought up as a Lutheran. And of course, when I was in the Navy, I decided that. Well, I met Chuck. And I was standing in the hallway, and he was standing there, and a woman was talking to him. He said, well, Reverend Chuck, I would like to know blah, 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 blah. So then the next class I had him, I said, are you a minister? You know, I was so surprised because he's always got these jokes.
Uh-huh.
And he said, yes, my name is Chuck Sanchez.
Uh-huh.
So I met his wife, Tika, and of course they were joint ministers in the Ventura, California. And I said, oh no, they're not going to tell me about hell and burning and all that stuff, are you? Oh, Ron, come on, this is something else. I think you're going to like this. You were invited to come to the meeting on Sunday at the Hilton in Oxnard. I said, well, okay. I was curious.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I think I was searching, but not actively. And I went to the meeting, and Chuck was himself. I don't know if you ever had the privilege of listening to his talks, but he always has something really, really good jokes. And I didn't know if I wanted to go back, but we continued contacting each other at the Y. So finally I did go back. And I was continually going to the Sunday meetings. And then Chuck and Tika were candidating for Las Vegas. And they went to Las Vegas, and then Dr. Lex James came in. You probably know him, or did. And Lex and Art were very, very wonderful people. And it was that time, that was about 83.
It's in the 70s.
In the early 90s. And I was still attending, and I decided I wanted to go to practitioner training. So he said, okay, let's do this. And I took the first year with Chuck, but then I had to go down to Santa Monica, where Michael Beckwith had his church, and I had to sign up for classes there. But then one of the practitioners decided that she could teach us. There was only two of us in the class, me and her husband and I. And that's where I finished my second year of practitioner training. And of course, Lex would always talk to me. I mean, he was such a remarkable man.
Yes, he was.
And and he said, well, Ron, have you ever thought about going to the school of ministry? You know, this is old school I'm talking. I said,
Mm-hmm.
are you kidding? Come on. So I finished the practitioner, and then he was standing up giving his lecture, and he says, Ron, would you stand up, please? Okay. And he said, Ron is thinking about going to the school of ministry. And I So then I was shocked, and I said to myself, why not? Here I am, I'm single, I can do whatever I want. But of course I found out it's down in Huntington Beach. And I lived in Oxnard, that's about 80 miles away, 80, 90 miles away. I said, how am I going to do this? I said, I can't go down there. So in my life, as my secular work, I've been a graphic artist, photographer, and I was out of job at that time. And this must have been about 89 or 90, because I entered the School of Ministry in 1990. And I interviewed at McDonnell Douglas in Long Beach, and they hired me. And they said, well, your job is from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 11 o'clock at night. I said, uh-oh, that's not going to work. But I did accept the job because the school hadn't started yet. And anyway, to make it a little bit shorter, my boss, Dick Higa, and he asked me, would you like to go on days? I'd jumping up and down. I said, yes. Well, what we're going to do, we're training new graphic artists, illustrators on computers. I had zero experience on computers.
Mm. So
I was trained to do that. And then we moved from the location that we were at to the building where they were constructing the C-17. It was still being built. And of course, I signed up for school right away. Roger Teal was
he was the minister there. Yes.
Yeah, he was a minister at Huntington Beach at the time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, just after that he was. But anyway, I got in. And school hadn't started yet. But here I was. When I was working at McDonnell Douglas, I knew I had to get to class at 6 o'clock. And to drive from Long Beach, that's where I moved from Oxnard to Ventura. And then I could drive very easily to Huntington Beach. So I lived there for 3 years in Long Beach.
Uh-huh.
And one of the guys that I was working with, I don't know, he just came out of the blue. No, I can't. I think God sent it. And he said, I got an apartment under me that's for rent. Do you know anybody? I said, yeah, me. So we were real good friends, and I rented the apartment under him, right by the beach, probably half a block away. And so I was set. I asked my boss, Dick, can I start at 6 o'clock and end at 3? Because we were working overtime at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, Ron. But he allowed me all the time off that I needed for seminars or time that the school needed me there, and without a problem whatsoever.
Wonderful.
So then at the end of the at the end of the school, when graduation time was coming around, they McDonnell Douglas were laying off some people, and here all these people are getting laid off, well, in the department. So I went to Dick. I said, Dick, why don't you lay me off? Because I'm leaving in June. And he said, well, you don't have to, because my job, I was the only one that could do it. And he said, well, but I said, I need the time, I need to go. He said, okay, thank you very much. So when graduation, I was out of a job for a while, but not long. And at this time, there was some Russian women that Marlene Oaks invited in. And I went to the Asilomar, and she introduced them all. And one of the women was with Seal Beach under Dwayne Cox. And I started listening to her, and she said, Ron, we need the people with Science of Mind. I said, oh, sure. So then I had no idea, Marilyn, where I was going to go. I thought, in my mind, I was going to go to a nice little church in California and live my life happily. When I tell people this story, it was an urge, a divine urge. I had to go. Mm-hmm. So then I met a practitioner that was living in Russia, and she was from San Jose, and her boyfriend was in Moscow.
What was her name?
Shirley, not Shirley.
Well, if you think of it, let me know.
Okay. I said no. And so I said, well, why don't we rent? I mean, she had a place. I said, I will pay you half rent. And so we agreed to meet in Chicago. And I live in Minnesota. She lived in California. So our planes had to meet at the same time. And then we boarded our plane to Moscow.
Very good.
And I was so excited. I did it, unbelievable. Mm. So we got off the plane. I think it was September 1993. And believe it or not, it was snowy.
September, okay, yeah.
And that was unusual because the people that I've talked to down in Moscow said that that's very unusual. Mm-hmm. So we had a contact that I had to have my passport. They had to, so I could be with these centers that they had in Moscow. So we were living together for a while, and one of the women that was in America, Evelina Zhdanova, mm-hmm. She came to me and said, she could speak Russian or English a little bit. She said, Ron, how would you like to go to Izhevsk? Mm-hmm. Because we're going to do seminars. Because she was a healer. And she said, well, we are going to do the healing portion, and you could talk about science of mind. I said, why not? And so we were aboard the train. There was 5 of us, I believe, and we got into Izhevsk, and the seminar was going fine, and then it was my time, and they had found 2 interpreters. One was Larissa, and the other one was Sasha. Sasha was a big bear of a man, but boy, jolly as can be, just like Chuck Sansis. So we spent 4 days doing seminars, and one of the women, Emilianova, she says, she come to me and says, Ron, we need people here. We need you in Egypt to teach science of mind. I had no idea. I wasn't going to go to Egypt. That was about 1,500 miles northwest of Moscow, near the Ural Mountains. I said, no. So I said, well, let me think about it. So we went back to Moscow. And anyway, Sasha Molotin's son, well, Sasha and I kept in contact with one another. And I said, I think I'm going to come back to the chef. He said, okay, I will send my son. We didn't know each other. And I had to meet him at the train station. I don't know how we met with one another, but we did.
Wow.
So a couple days later, we were on our way back to Egypt. And they found a place for me to stay. And everything was going great. So the interpreter, so Emilianova found a place where we could have meetings. We couldn't say it was a religion.
Right.
It was called a font. It was like a nonprofit organization.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really strict about that. So I would get up every Sunday and do my lectures. And it went on like this for several years, probably 3 years. And then I had a brainstorm. I said, what we have in America, which I'd like to start here, which is called an Asilomar, where we gather together all of the little groups and we meet at this place and we have talks.
How many groups do you think there were at that time?
There must have been at least 40.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe 50. But so I said, okay, we're going to have the Asilomar at such and such a date. And we had 43 in attendance, including men, women, and children. And we had the best time. A volunteer cook. Everything was voluntary, and we just had a wonderful time and continued from then on. Several years later, I invited Americans to come, but so finally Christian Sorensen came, and that was a good time. But I had been teaching all of these classes. But how am I teaching these classes? Well, it was because I had to have all of the material translated and printed in Russian. This in the science of mind, everything. Mm-hmm. And most of it was out of my pocket. But then over the years, Roger Teal's church, Huntington Beach, tied me $500 a month, which helped a lot because I had to pay the translator, the interpreters, I had all of this, but it wasn't enough. So we had all of the class materials, all of the books. I have a list of books and everything. There must be 40-some books.
My goodness.
In the class material. So what I was doing was teaching practitioners at that time. And I said, what you going to do when you graduate, when you pass the exam, you are going to teach these classes. And they did. And this was the year that Christian was there and another practitioner, and they paneled them. And all of them passed. There were 11. And I was very excited. So one group went to Watkins, which is about 40 miles away. They started a group in Watkins. And then, of course, our Sunday meetings went into Wednesday meetings. Wednesday was classwork that I like to conduct. I mean, this is one of my favorite things.
Mhm.
So then it was over the years. Now a little bit later, there was a woman that came to one of the conventions, and she said, "You know, there's a lot of interest where I live. Do you think you could come down here?" I said, "Well, I guess so." It's in Krasnodar. That was about 80 miles away. So I would be doing lectures on Sunday in Ijevsk, and then driving to Krasnodar on the weekday and doing lectures there, and then coming back. And I was also doing class after the lectures. I would be doing a class because I wanted people to be graduating, to starting into their practitioner training, so they can spread out more.
Mhm.
And in the event, all of this, what transpired, I chartered 3 churches in Russia.
Wow.
One was in Ijevsk, one was in Krasnodar, and they were going really, really well. In fact, one of the practitioners that I trained, she's still doing Science of Mind where she lives, and her Irina Babushkina. And I talk to them on Facebook every once in a while. And
Mhm.
her husband came to visit me for about a month, and we just had a good time. And
Mhm.
then that was getting close to 2008, 2009, and I began to have a little bit of pain in my leg. And I said, "What can this be?" So I went to the doctor, but before this, Marilyn,
Mhm.
almost every year I've spent 10 days in the hospital with bronchitis
Mhm.
every year in the winter. And I never had it in the United States. Of course, I live in California. And I said, well, so then after this stuff at my leg, I said, well, I think I'm going to go back to the United States and see what it is. And I am a veteran, so I went over to the VA, and they said, well, you're going to have a hip transplant. I said, oh, thanks. So I spent the time recuperating with my sister and her husband, and that was about 2 months. And then I went back to Russia, and continued doing the work, going back to Krasnodar and teaching, and going back to Watkins and all of these places. We would have probably 70 to 80, 100 people at a lecture.
Mm.
And it was, and I wanted to be just like America. They introduced themselves, and they knew people, and we all clap, and the old kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And then I had some eye problems, and I said, what can this be? So they went to the doctor again, and said, well, I had to have a lens operation, not a cataract. So I had it done in Russia. Of course, it didn't cost me anything. Oh, no, it did cost. Yes, it cost me because the doctor asked me, okay, you have 3 choices. You can have the lens from Russia, Israel, or the United States. I said, I'll take the one from the United States, please. And that cost me about $1,000.
Mm.
So, but then after several visits back to her, she said, well, you got something called macular degeneration. I said, oh my gosh, what is that? I had to look it up online. So and doing the computer stuff way back when, oh my gosh, when the modems were going beep, 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 beep.
Uh,
It's a good thing I had people in the group, one or two people that were computer tech savvy. That's how I learned all of my stuff from them.
mm-hmm.
And then I came back to the United States to get the other lens operated on.
Oh.
And so then I went back to Russia. And
Now, what year are we in now? About
we're at about 2010.
10. That's not long ago. Okay.
No. And because I spent about 18 years there.
Hmm.
And I even had to go to the city hall, that's what you call like, to visit the KGB office.
Mm-hmm.
One time they invited me there. I said, well, what for?
Yeah.
Because they thought that, you know, like, what am I teaching? Anybody could come to the lectures, and I had priests from the Orthodox Church come there, and they enjoyed the lecture. We went everywhere in the city of Ijevsk, finding just the right spot. And most of it was free rent, most, but not all of it. Of course, had to pay the interpreters and all of this. So, and the printing just kept going. And then Bob Garbowski came over one time, and I said something about teaching them practitioners public speaking. So he was in Toastmasters. So he sent me the information. So I started a Toastmasters group here. I mean, in Russia. And we had about 40 people in the class, and most of them were practitioners, and they were very good. They went up, they did the lectures, they did the classes to give me a little bit of a break. And I bought a house and improved that. And then it was in 2010, I had to come back again, they said, because of my eye. And I was thinking, I think I better come back and stay. And it was about 2010 that I finally left, which, looking hindsight, I should never have done, because the group sort of dissipated without me. And then there was another woman who took place, my place, and I guess she was also went to the United States a couple times. But I know, whoops. Okay. Thank you for suffering. Anyway, I decided to come back to Minnesota. The reason I came back to Minnesota because my mother and dad had a condo, and they both passed away, and my sister was renting it out, this condo. She said, well, the woman that's in there now is leaving, so there's a space for you. That's where I live now, and which is I'm paying the association fee and all the utilities, so I'm staying here. And then I became a little bit active in the Minneapolis chapter, Science and Mind.
In the what? Which chapter?
In the Minneapolis Science and Mind Church.
Okay. Yeah.
And
is that still going?
Yes, but Marilyn, this woman who has it does not have the Science of Mind credentials.
Oh.
And I was help co-teaching a foundation class, and the students I was telling them they had a habit of coming in from break and eating their break stuff, and I said, I'm sorry, but no more food after break. you cannot bring it into class. This is strictly learning. So some of the students complained to the minister over there and said, well, because I was too full of myself. And I
Mhm.
said, well, if I'm too full of myself, then I'm too full of this church. So I'm not doing anything right now
Mhm.
except writing, and that's about it. And interviewing with you, Marilyn.
Okay, great. Well, it's been wonderful to learn all about what you've been doing. Now, I heard that you were married at some point to a Russian lady,
Yes,
but you're not anymore,
I'm
or
not.
you're not. Okay.
We have a son, and I had him today, and only until he went to school, he's taken some summer classes to help him with his math and his reading, because he's in a Spanish immersion class.
Okay.
And this wife that I was married to was a practitioner that I taught, but I'm not going to get into why.
No,
No.
no, 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 no. I'm
But
not.
I'm very, very proud of my son. He's 10,
Okay.
and he is a very smart boy.
Good.
And
That's
we
wonderful.
get along. When I say, especially when he was younger, I said, Dave, you want to go fishing? He was out the door.
Yeah. So are you living in Minneapolis now at this
I
time?
live in St. Paul, which is
St.
Roseville, which is a suburb of St. Paul.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. Well, do you have anything you would like to say to the people, the audience?
Well,
About
first of all,
yeah.
let me continue one thing, Marilyn. What I did in my time in Russia also, I had a website up, Life in Russia. And it was up for a long, long time. But there wasn't much activity. It was both in English and Russian.
Mm,
So what I have to say, I wish I'd never left Russia.
mm,
I would continue living my dream,
which is
teaching. I went to Russia
mm,
with a sea bag, an old blue suitcase, and $3,000 in my pocket. And through that, I had faith in a dream about expanding science of mind. Not what Ron teaches. No, no, no. It was never a Ron show. Never. And I think there are people like Christian Sorensen and maybe Bob Grabowski who knew that. It was always about the people and getting them trained to be practitioners.
mm-hmm.
Live your dream.
Okay. Do you have a message to give to the people who will be watching this interview about the science of mind in the future, in the world?
The science of mind are not going anywhere. I still live the science of mind.
Of
I
course.
do not lie. I do not steal. I am a morally up because this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's especially what I want to teach my son and anybody who has contact with me. Of course, I have a neighbor down the 2 doors from me, and they're in the Christian church, and we have real good discussions of this.
Good.
But they're not heated. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
and
Just an exchange of ideas.
we're really exchanging ideas, and this is what I've always liked to do: is exchange ideas
Mm-hmm.
and to bring out something that people they're more spiritual now than religious. Of course, I think most people know that.
Mm-hmm.
And spirituality will never go away. I say my spiritual mind treatments. They do my affirmations. And And I'm glad I'm a religious scientist.
That's great. That's great. Well, I think unless you have something else you would like to, a message you would like to give to the world, I will conclude this recording. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Well, thank you, Ron. It's been wonderful seeing you again and speaking with you. And I appreciate you participating in the Wise Sage project of the Science of Mind Archives.
Thank you, Marilyn, for the invitation. I do appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Marilyn Leo. I am the founder of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. I trust that you have enjoyed this interview, which is part of the Wise Sage project of the archives. It is a gift of love, as is the foundation itself, and depends entirely on your generosity. We appreciate your donation in support of the preservation and availability of our science and mind history.